Right, hopefully you can all hear me, and we're going to do things a little bit differently this time round, and I think it's time for a little bit of sharing and a little bit of discussion. And I mentioned 4 questions, not Sunday just gone, but the one before that, all to do with this business of new wine. And so brace yourselves because you kind of have an opportunity to chat some of this stuff through together rather than listening to me talk a lot. I am going to talk a little just to introduce you to the theme and remind you. So I'm just going to pop something up on the screen now, and hopefully there it is. So listening to God, new wine. And before I launch into this thing, before I forget, this time next week, EMBA have announced a day of prayer and fasting on Wednesday, the 18th of November next week. I'll circulate some stuff around the church via Gwyneth about what's going on during the day. But I think what we might do in the evening is join in with some of these themes that are being prayed about by our Baptist family locally. So I thought I'd just tip that one off to you. So there's lots of details on the EMBA website, and they're going to be looking at 3 things during the day, focusing on the church, the community, and the world. And we might touch on some of that in the evening next week. So that's an advance notice for you. But I want to read to you tonight the passage that we looked at a couple of weeks ago from Matthew. So just let me read from Matthew chapter 9. And it's that context of the whole new wine thing and what was going on there. So as Jesus went on from there, he saw a man named Matthew sitting at the tax collector's booth. "Follow me," he told him. And Matthew got up and followed him. While Jesus was having dinner at Matthew's house, many tax collectors and sinners came and ate with him and his disciples. And when the Pharisees saw this, they asked his disciples, "Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?" And on hearing this, Jesus said, "It's not the healthy who need a doctor, but those who are ill. But go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice, for I've not come to call the righteous, but sinners." And then John's disciples came and asked him, "How is it that we and the Pharisees fast often, but your disciples do not fast?" And Jesus answered, "How can the guests of the bridegroom mourn when he is with them? The time will come when the bridegroom will be taken away from them. Then they will fast. No one sews a patch of unshrunk cloth on an old garment, for the new patch will pull away from the garment, making the tear worse. And neither do people pour new wine into old wineskins. If they do, the skins will burst, the wine will run out, and the wineskins be ruined. No, they pour new wine into new wineskins, and both are preserved. So let me pull that down for a bit. So a couple of weeks ago, we had a bit of a look at this passage and these 3 vibrant images that Jesus uses to grasp why the new needs to be different from the old. And in particular, I like the image of the new wine, the effervescent stuff, because of all this fermenting process that's going on inside. And it's like new life trying to burst out and fill the space and get excited. We've got this grandson, Benjamin, who is about 2.5, and I think you saw him at the induction service, and he's one of those toddlers who is he's like the ball in the pinball machine. He just runs around and bounces off everything because everything's new and exciting for him. That's what life's about. He just wants to explore it all, and he's full of energy. And energy, if you try and contain it, will just burst whatever is going on around it. And yeah, you get the gist of that and where I'm going. And what I want to have a little bit of a look at are these questions that we touched on that Sunday service. And I mentioned 4 questions. They came from a guy called George Ling, so credit to him. And the questions were thinking of this period of lockdown and change and all this stuff that's been forced on us, and some of the stuff that we've had to not do and some of the new stuff that we've had to do. This time will come to an end, and with the announcement in the last week or so that a vaccine has been invented, created, the scientists have found a way, they're going to go into mass production, and now we're all looking forward to the new year. We're going to get jabs. Hopefully life is going to get back to normal, whatever normal is. And we're all excited and hopeful about that. But these 4 questions are still very relevant when we look ahead to hopefully better things in 2021. During this time, what have we lost that actually, thinking about church and kingdom and God's commission to us and the call on our lives as disciples, what have we lost that really ought to stay lost? What have we lost during this time that we must regain? We've got to get that back because it's just not right that it's not been there. What has been gained during this time that actually, thinking about it, we ought to hang on to that because it's kind of forced us to do some stuff that probably we ought to have been doing before, and we've discovered that actually this is quite good and we can use it. And what has been gained during this time that we regard as perhaps a temporary necessity that we can now let go of? And even is there some bad habits that we ought to let go of? Have we got lazy in any of our discipleship, perhaps? So I pondered these questions, and sorry, I've scrolled down. My mouse is, there it is. I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. If we think of the questions just one at a time for a minute, I've put some suggestions out there and you will have your own. But what have we lost that's got to stay lost? Were we, prior to this lockdown time, were we reliant on a sundry-centric shape of church? Were we reliant on the person at the front doing everything for us? That's their job. When actually we've suddenly discovered that discipleship is our discipleship. Have we discovered that maybe church had become, I've used the words comfortable or complacent, but had we got into a rut, into a routine that we've been forced to rethink and move out of? Had we even got into a club mentality? And that whole IT thing that we've suddenly realized we can do, perhaps it ought to feature a bit more. What have we lost that we ought to regain? And for me, the first thing there was fellowship and worship. We need that. Contributions from everybody. I mean, the team now that is pulling a service together on Sundays, very different to the team that was pulling it together in church. We've got contributions from new folks, being outward facing, YouTube, Zoom, all of those folks outside the church and making ourselves more accessible. Where's our plan? Where's our vision to look outwards a bit more? What has been gained that we could hold on to? I think there's been a lot of one anothering going on out there, looking after each other. That's brilliant. There's been some responsibility, taking responsibility for our own personal discipleship, because Sundays has not been the feature for some of us, particularly those who've not been logging on Zoom and not being able to access the technology side, taking responsibility for our own discipleship. IT, different ways of being church, engaging with ministry, first little steps on Zoom, bringing church into people's front rooms, and the numbers out there that they're talking about still of people who've accessed church that didn't do so before, quite fascinating. This recognition that actually we can do it, we can adapt, and we can cope. That's something I think that we could hold on to. For me, a great blessing has been the church leadership working closely together. We've been Zooming pretty much every week, and our relationships have developed through that. And I've been blessed through that particularly. And what has been gained that we can let go of? First thing again that popped into my head was the stress that's related to this pace of change that we've had to deal with. Hopefully we can get back to a better pace. The total reliance on IT, using Zoom, hopefully we can get back to some sort of hybrid, a bit of both, a balance between buildings and Zoom.